You're listening to the Adventurous Reinvention podcast. I'm Allison Boyle, aka She Dreams of Alpine, and this is the show that's dedicated to all the adventurous spirits out there who have either been transformed by the outdoors or are interested in what it looks like to step into a new, adventurous, and courageous kind of identity in their life. It doesn't matter what your background is in the outdoors, what age you're starting at, or where you grew up. If you're curious about the outdoors and using adventure as a way to reinvent yourself, you're in the right place. I'll be sharing all kinds of personal adventure stories, lessons I've learned from the mountains, teaching what I know about the outdoors and leadership, and interviewing some amazing adventurous women all along the way. I've been coaching women on becoming safe, confident, and self-sufficient backpackers and leaders of their own adventurous lives since 2018, and I know exactly what big fears and self-doubts can pop up along the way. I have so much to share with you, so let's dive in. All right, hello, and welcome back to the Adventurous Reinvention podcast. So it has been a couple weeks actually since I have posted an episode, and that is just because life has been crazy. Crazy in a good way. We actually just officially wrapped up our 2026 Adventurous Reinvention Experience trip season. So if you want to learn more about the Adventurous Reinvention Experience, because I'm not going to go all into those details, but you can learn more at shedreamsofalpine.com/ARE. That is our waitlist page, and it tells you all about the program, but it's like a hybrid program. We do coaching all summer together, training all summer together, and then it ends in an in-person backpacking trip experience. And we had 3 different groups of women and different kind of like technicalities and where they're at with backpacking. We had a beginner group, a beginner mediate group, and we had an intermediate group. So I was out in California for 3 weeks, and I literally just got back from our last in-person trip, part of that experience, literally like last week. And there has been something that I've been sitting with ever since I got off the trail. And it's one of those things that kept showing up over and over again this season in almost every single group and on almost every single trip. And I knew that I just needed to record an episode about it. And what better way to kick off coming back to the podcast after a couple weeks break. So thanks for your patience with me on that. So that is what we're going to talk about today. The thing that I want you to picture is I want you to imagine that there are 2 women on the very same trail. They are experiencing the same exact weather. They're doing the same mileage. They have the same elevation gain. Let's pretend they have all the same issues, like maybe the same blisters, probably cursed at a switchback the same number of times. Literally, they are in the same physical experience, right down to the snacks that they have to eat at the summit. Okay, so I want you to imagine 2 women, same everything. All right. So one of them comes home and all she can talk about is how hard it was. The rain, the bugs, the other person in her group who was snoring at night. Maybe she's talking about how slow she was and annoyed that she was the last one in the group. Maybe she was also talking about the oppressive heat. She is just depleted after this trip. She's like, yeah, it was fine, but all these things went wrong. And you can tell it wasn't fine. It was just like this thing that happened to her. And you're kind of like, well, why do you even backpack, right? Then imagine the other person, the same woman on the same experience, comes home lit up. Again, same trail, same rain, same bugs, same snoring tent mate, right? But she's talking about this moment on day 2 when the clouds broke. Everyone just stopped. They looked at each other. It was beautiful. She's talking about the friends that she made. She's talking about the heat that almost ruined her, but how the group came in and supported her in her toughest moment and how she felt so supported and loved. And she's already planning her next trip. She is lit up. All right. Same hike, 2 completely different experiences. So here's the thing. It isn't the trail that was different, which you can obviously tell. We emphasize that, right? It wasn't the conditions. It is the lens. It is what each of them brought with them before they ever hit the trail. So that is what I want to dig into today. I want to dig into this concept that the lens that you bring to an adventure, whether that's a learning lens, a connection lens, an optimist lens, a silver lining lens. And like, think about lens. When I say lens, think about lens like glasses, right? The way you view the world. It doesn't just color how you remember something. It actually shapes your experience and what you notice while it's happening, what you feel in your body, and what you walk away with. So again, the same two women, same trail, they could have completely different trips. And there is actually real science behind why this happens, which we're going to get into. But the first thing that I want to tell you, what actually sparked this idea for me was, like I said, we're just wrapping up our 2026 Adventurous Reinvention Experience season. And something that always like strikes me every single year, but particularly this year because it's fresh on my mind, is how much a woman's attitude and the lens that she has going into this trip shapes the entire arc of her trip and her experience. So many of the women in the groups tell me that we've created something special with our Adventurous Reinvention Experience groups. And I often get asked, like, how do we do it? How do we curate that? How do we make it so special? And I've learned that part of it is the container and how we work with our clients to shape their lens from the very beginning. So like when you sign up for this experience, we're working together all summer. We're doing life coaching together all summer because it's like a part coaching, part adventure kind of experience. So they are like in that growth mindset from the very beginning. And people join the Adventurous Reinvention Experience with a like challenges will shape me kind of a mindset, with a connection mindset, like they're interested in connecting with other people, other like-minded women. They sign up with us with reinvention and transformation and connection and all those things in mind. And we nurture that throughout our summer together inside the coaching program. So I definitely think this shapes the lens of the women who join our particular trips because they realize they have power to shape their experience in life. And it starts with their lens and their thoughts. So I watched it happen so many times this season. I remember in our Slack channel, so we have a Slack channel that's kind of our small little community. This group is only about 30 total women, and each individual group that we go on a trip on is 12 women max each. So I remember in our Slack channel where we have like kind of our community for the summer, before we even started our first trip was our beginner group. We posted into the Slack channel. We said, hey guys, it's going to be really hot. Just wanted to give you a heads up. It's going to be hotter than normal. There's kind of like a heat wave going through the area. Just be prepared. And we like posted the weather. And then inside of the group, women from that trip started just saying unprompted. They just did this. They go, it is hot and we won't be cold. And then another woman chimed in, it is hot and we get to hang out together. And then another woman's jumped in, it is hot and we're going on a badass trip. And then another woman said, it is hot and with beautiful views. And then another woman said, it is hot and with strong women. And I was like, okay, like I remember jumping back into the Slack channel and I was thinking like, hell yes, this is exactly the kind of lens that makes an amazing trip. Even with challenges like heat. Heat can definitely be something that can like weigh on you, bring your mood down when you're on a challenging trip, right? And likewise, on our middle trip, which was our intermediate trip, there was a moment when we had a really tough section of trail in the heat. And I saw everyone support each other with the lens of helping one another through a tough section. And we ended that day, like it could have just been a kind of draining day. Like, oh my gosh, that was so hot. Like it was, and you could have like dwelled in it, right? But we ended that day with positivity, reflecting on how this shapes what you might do in the future, how they handled it well. And it was like such a learning mindset, such a learning lens. On one of our very first Adventurous Reinvention Experience trips for our intermediate group, we actually had a freak hurricane hit California. It's like one of those once in a 40-year things. I've done a podcast episode all about it. So if you want to hear it, you can go back and listen to that. But It impacted the mountains like way more than we were anticipating, because originally when we went into the trip, it was only supposed to be light rain, but it like that forecast changed like drastically each day that we were out on the trail. So we were in contact with our safety contact, and she was giving us updates each morning. And about 2 days into our backpacking trip, what was originally forecasted as light rain turned into this like, we need to get out of here kind of rain. Like rain all day will impact things, right? Will impact streams, could impact rockfall, safety, all those things, right? It was going to make a huge impact on the rivers, potentially, put mudslide potential, just like a big safety decision we needed to consider. And so we made the choice as a group. We were like, okay, I think the smart choice is to turn around. And then, that's a point where as a leader, I could see my group going into the lens of like, just naturally, like this is something they've been training for all summer, getting prepared for. I could see them going into maybe like, this sucks. Like I didn't get to do my trip. Like I didn't get to do the whole thing that I set out to. We were supposed to do Whitney. The mood could have gone south really fast. But I personally, like I am a serial optimist. It's one of my strengths. Okay, so one of my go-to lenses in life and in the outdoors is that I'm always searching and providing a silver lining. I'm searching for it all the time. That is like a lens that I have on all the time. So I was like, y'all, this is even better than what we had planned. I was like, listen, you will never get this kind of experience like pre-planned. I could not have curated a better learning experience for you. You're going to learn so much more than you would have going to the top of Mount Whitney. Like you can go to the top of Mount Whitney whenever you want to. This peak is going to be there. This is better than that. And let me tell you why. And I got to tell them, they got to learn how to navigate serious weather, safety moments. They got to see what it's like to have these kinds of conversations with other women, with guides, learning how we make these safety calls in the moments when the pressures are high, and you can't fabricate that, right? We're, as guides, we're not going to purposely put you into those situations if we can avoid it. Like if it was dangerous, but they were there and we were there and we navigated it all together. And like silver lining on top of that, extra silver lining that I didn't even anticipate is we got to see the Eastern Sierras that year come alive in a way that I'd never seen before. There was so much rain, and I remember there's this like one campground that we set up. One of the days when it was going to be 24-hour rain, we were too far out to like fully exit. It would have just been too big of a day to do the day before to get off trails. So we found a safe place to camp and set up camp that was like high enough. We weren't worried about like water rising or mudslides or rockfall or anything like that. So we hunkered down for 24 hours when the rain was supposed to be the worst. What I remember is like we went on, we knew when the rain was supposed to come in. So we got our camp all set up and got our stations all set up so that way we could be nice and dry when the rain kind of hit. And we decided to go on a little hike nearby. There was a lake nearby. So we went for a little hike, and, the meadow was already like flooded with water because it was kind of a wet year already. And you could just tell like the wildlife was preparing for this event. Like it knew as well. So we were like preparing for this event, and all this wildlife was like out preparing for the event. There was these marmots and these little pika, and everything was like out gathering little items and like preparing their home. And we got to see it come alive, and it was really, really cool. And we also, had to the trail was missing. So we had to walk through these flooded sections, and we just took our shoes off and we walked around like hobbits. And it was just one of the most special memories of the whole trip, and one of everyone's favorite memories of the trip, just walking around. Right. And, and that was really, really neat to see nature come alive that way. And then my clients got to hunker down for 24 hours, which isn't the most fun, I will say. Hunkering down in a tent for weather isn't the most fun, but it is a really good experience. You get to see all these ways we stay warm. How do we hunker down? How do we keep our mindset positive? How do we make the best of this decision? I was just thinking to myself, I could not have created a better experience for my clients to really learn and become better backpackers. And this was our intermediate group. They were hungry to learn, right? Hungry to get better, hungry to have more experience. And this is something that they would get to add to their adventure experience banks that gives them more self-confidence to handle something like this for their own trips in the future. Again, like I could not have curated that. And now they can go into trips where the weather is a little bit unknown and they're like, oh yeah, I've navigated something like that before. So for me, that's huge. But I set that lens from the beginning. As soon as I knew we had to make that decision, I was like, let's find the silver lining. Let's see how amazing this can be. Let's look for the value. Look at these river crossings we're doing. Look at all the things that you're learning. This is what I do with like an optimist and silver lining lens. And an optimist sees the silver lining. She sees opportunity. She sees the value. She sees the growth. And even if it's in a perceived failure. Okay. So the science part, that's just a little story to kind of set this in, right? Something that could have been potentially a tough trip and gotten spirits down. Like we made the best of it. And that is all because of the lens we took into that experience. So the science part to back this up, there's actually a part of your brain called the reticular activating system. And for short, RAS, basically think of it as your brain's filter. So your brain cannot possibly process everything that's happening around you at once. So it's constantly deciding what is worth your attention and what you should ignore. And it makes that decision based on what you've told it to look for. So if you go into a hike or an adventure, focus on all the things that are hard, annoying, not going the right way, where the danger is, your brain is going to start flagging that for you, right? It's going to flag more hard things, more annoying things, more danger. And it's not like being dramatic. It's doing its job. It thinks it's doing what you're asking it for. But if you go in with a learning lens, an optimistic lens, a lens of connection, an I can do this, like a capability lens, I can do this, your brain will start flagging lessons and connection and capability and silver lining moments every single place that you go. Even on the same trail with the same data coming in through your eyes and ears, you can create a completely different experience for yourself because your brain is only showing you what it thinks you asked for, which means your lens isn't just this nice, like, positive mindset thing. It is actually legitimately shaping your reality of your experience on the trail. So let's actually talk about what it means to set that lens, because just think positive is not what I'm talking about here. And we'll get into why in just a second. So I want you to think about there being like two different ways of showing up to an adventure or an experience. This is something that I talk about with my clients in the Adventurous Reinvention experience at the very beginning of our program. I talk about like there being a student mindset. So one of those like ways of showing up is like with a student mindset. And when I say that, I mean more like having a very black and white thinking kind of mindset, very pass, fail. Did the trip go the way I planned or not? Did I have a good time or not? It's like more of a passive and rigid mindset, right? So you show up, you hope for the best. When conditions aren't perfect or exactly as you planned them, you feel defeated because it feels like failure, because that's kind of what you've set yourself up for, right? The other way to show up to an adventure experience is what I call maybe like, for simplicity's sake, like an investor mindset, if you think of being an investor, right? An investor doesn't wait to see if something was worth it. She decides in advance that she's going to extract every possible ounce of value from that experience, no matter what happens. Before she even gets there, she's already thinking through all the ways this could be valuable for her. She's not hoping for value. She's going looking for it. She's like actively seeking it, even as conditions change and plot twists arrive. So whenever I sign up for something or even decide to go on any kind of adventure, I decide ahead of time that I'm going to get value. And I think about how. I experience it before I've even done the thing, right? So for example, when I went on the West Highland Way last year, it was West Highland Way, just background, is a through hike in Scotland. And I was supposed to do it as a friend trip with my two very best friends. And over the year, as like life was lifing for my friends, one of my friends backed out, and then the other one could only go like half the trip. So it turned into this like trip with my friend for part of the time and then part solo trip. Basically, it just wasn't what it was originally supposed to be. And I remember, at first being really bummed about it and like even thinking, oh, well, this wasn't exactly as I originally planned and it's going to be like not the same. And then I remember deciding that I was going to make the best of it and I was going to go anyways. I decided I was going to have a great experience. I decided there was going to be fun and lessons and value that I couldn't even see yet out of this experience. And then I curated for myself when I was like making that decision to be all in on the trip still, even though it wasn't the same as it was supposed to be. I thought about all the reasons that I wanted to go. It was a bucket list trip. I have been wanting to do the West Highland Way ever since my husband and I went in 2021. I've wanted to go back and I wanted to hike that trail. I was also going in the fall, so I wanted to see the fall colors. It was the moody, rainy season, which for me, like, I don't always get that kind of vibe out where I'm hiking in the West Coast, or not West Coast, but the Western US. Like I'm in Colorado now, or in California, it's quite sunny. So I was like interested in the moody, rainy season, and it's like kind of romantic. And also I love solo hiking. So more solo hiking experience is great. I also hadn't gone on a solo international trip in a while, so it was going to be a good experience for me to exercise my solo international muscles again. And then being able to teach lessons to my clients when I get back, that's value that I can bring. I got to create the podcast for it. So many of y'all have told me that you loved my daily podcast recaps of the West Highland Way. So I got to create value there. I got to open myself up to a great adventure. I got to feel alive, to navigate uncertainty, which when you're traveling alone, there's all kinds of uncertainty. I'd never done that trail before. I was going to be alone. It was going to be in an international, alone for most of the time. But I got to like see how strong and capable I am. And I think that's worth doing for yourself, like frequently, reminding yourself how capable and badass you are. And so even before I went on the trip, like I now can look back and see so much more value than that. But like those are things I was thinking about before I even left for the trip. And even thinking about the trip gave me value. Like I felt lit up. That feeling of being lit up is valuable, because when I was lit up thinking about my trip and thinking about all the ways it was going to be amazing, I was feeling so lit up, and that was helping me show up to my life in a way that I was activated and creating value in my life. So the lens that I decided to have to get value no matter what created even more value than I could have imagined. Another example I'll share with you is, this is like a simple one, but it's like fresh on my mind. So I wanted to share it here. So I'm often taking long drives, especially for when we do retreats. I just bring my van. So, we do our backpacking trips in California for the Adventurous Reinvention experience. That is like a 17-hour trip. And I usually split it up in 7 and 10 hours. I also we do some climbing retreats that are in different areas and are often 12 hours. And so I'm often taking long road trips because it's my preference to have all my stuff with me. And I like doing road trips in the van. So people are always asking me like if it's pretty brutal and boring on those long drives, but I love a long drive. And my lens going into a road trip is like, before I even hit the road, I'm like kind of almost fantasizing about like how I can get the most value out of the drive. And I will literally start brainstorming weeks ahead of time about all the things I'm excited to listen to, think through, be inspired by. I like write down, I'll save up like coaching calls of programs that I'm in that I want to listen to or re-listen to. I'll download books. I'll go through all my podcasts and be like, oh, what will I have time to catch up on? Because I honestly don't always have a lot of time to listen to things that I want to. So it's like this time for me to be inspired. And I always come up with like the most amazing ideas because I have just endless amounts of hours just to think and be inspired and listen to coaching. And it ends up being some of my most creative time that I have all year are those long road trips. So I love it. Someone else could do the same drive and call it boring. Call it a drag. Call it like, oh my gosh, I don't get anything done because I'm driving the whole time. But I just decide in advance that these drives are going to be so valuable to me. And I always walk away just like feeling so like lit up with ideas and really inspired. And it's a great way to start trips because like I'm inspired already and then I get to go on my trips and then I leave my trips and I'm inspired again. And it's just like I come back from long retreats like very energized. So that is an example of the investor mindset. You don't wait for conditions to be perfect to decide something is going to be valuable. You decide the value ahead of time, then you go looking for it. You start actively creating it before you've even gone on the adventure that you're planning, okay? So the flip side of that is so many of us delay value. We tell ourselves, I'll feel proud of myself once I hit the summit. I'll let myself enjoy this once the trip goes the way I planned. And that means if the trip doesn't go the way you planned, which, spoiler, it usually won't, at least not exactly. I mean, sometimes it does, but a lot of times our trips go plot twisty, right? If you are banking everything on going exactly as planned to be happy and to get value, you've literally robbed yourself of the value the whole time you were out there. If you are waiting for perfect conditions to let yourself have the experience and perfect conditions never show up, then you've lost the value. So the value and lens has to get decided in advance, not evaluated afterwards. There were even, some of my clients on the Adventurous Reinvention Experience who, they're like a couple people who didn't get to go on the trips because something came up in their lives, health issue or something in their family. And I always encourage them to really sit down and see how much value they created, even though they didn't get to go on the trips. For even just being willing to put themselves in the arena, to put themselves in the room, to dare to do an amazing like summer of growth. They were training all summer. They were working on new things. They got so much value out of this summer. And if they can take the time to realize that, they're not going to be beating themselves up. Like, it's going to be disappointing. It's always disappointing when things don't go like how you originally imagined them. And, you need to give yourself time to process that. Like, yeah, grieve the loss, but then look for the value. Look for the value in all of it so that you can keep moving forward and keep creating amazing experiences and adventures in your life. This is the way we do it. So I think about this every time when I sign up for something now, whether it's a program, a trip that I'm planning, maybe investing in a coach. Like, for example, like I just recently got a climbing coach to work with on my climbing goals, whatever it is. I always ask myself, how am I going to guarantee that I get value out of this no matter what happens? Because if I leave that up to chance, like up to whether the weather cooperates or the group gels or the trail goes exactly as I planned it, then I'm gambling with my own experience. But if I decide the value ahead of time, this is why I'm here. This is what I'm looking for. This is what I want to walk away with regardless. Then nothing can take that value away from you. not a canceled friend, not a rerouted trail, not a rained out summit. Like you are going to have that lens of like, I'm just gathering up as much value as I can when I can. And, even if it goes wrong, like I haven't lost it. Like I am going to keep going and growing and feel alive and make the most out of this. So I asked my clients on our most recent adventurous reinvention experience before we went on the trail. So like about a month ago now, before we were about to meet in person for our backpacking trips, I asked them to journal about this. I said, as we get closer to our backpacking adventures together, I'd love for you to spend a few minutes thinking about the experience you want to create, not just the places you'll see. And I said, instead of focusing on everything you hope happens, I want you to choose 3 words that describe how you want to experience this trip. And then I gave them some ideas like curious, brave, present, playful, connected, confident, open, joyful, grounded, resilient, grateful, all kinds of opportunities for ideas. So I want them to pick 3 words, how they want to experience this trip. This was me prepping them to have a lens, right? And then I asked them to journal on these questions. Why did you choose each word? What does each word look like in action? And what's one small way you can intentionally embody each word during our time together? And then I asked them to finish the sentence. The woman who shows up to this trip is someone who ... So this was an exercise that I asked them to do, and I know several of them did this because they told me about their words when we were on our trip. But can you see how valuable an exercise like this is to the value that you gain from any experience? This is how we begin to shape our lens. So your own trailside version of this can look exactly like what I just the prompt that I gave to my clients anytime you go on an adventure. But also before your next hike, you can ask yourself just even simply, like, what lens do I want to bring to today no matter what? Maybe it's like a learning lens where you are actively looking for what this trail is going to teach you, right? So you're putting on those learning lens glasses. I remember on the John Muir Trail when we actually got kicked off early, 12 days into our 22-day hike, through hike, wildfires hit and we had to leave. They were like evacuating the whole national forest. And it was a really huge bummer. And I definitely felt that, like I felt the bummerness of it, right? But I immediately, after we were like, okay, this is like, I don't want to argue with reality. This is happening. So I immediately started thinking about all the things and ways I could learn from this. Like how much not only I would benefit from that experience and also because I was a coach at the time. This was back in 2020. So I started She Dreams of Alpine in 2019. But I was already thinking like, how can my clients will benefit from me having this experience? And they have, because I've like literally created trainings on wildfire safety that were directly from me having this active experience where we were in imminent wildfire danger. Okay, so they got to benefit from that value. I got to create massive value. It's probably better. Like the experience that I had there gave me more value than if I just had finished the whole JMT through hike in one go. You could also have a connection lens where you're looking for the moment with the person next to you or with nature around you. You're looking to connect, right? So, sometimes like when it's raining, even just like in connecting with nature, like sometimes I think about this a lot. Like you're just in it, you're hiking the miles, but sometimes I like want to connect with the experience that I'm having, the nature around me. When it's raining, which sometimes could be viewed as like a bummer, like, oh my gosh, it's raining. I like to also kind of switch the lens on that and think about how alive I feel when it rains and like really feel it on my face. Like, experience it. Like I remember on the West Highland Way, I was just like living for the wind and the cold and the rain. Like, of course there were some days where I was like, okay, now I'm ready for some sun. But like there were some moments that I was just like, oh my gosh, I feel so tapped in. I feel so alive. I love this. This is exactly what I was looking for in my like moody Scotland West Highland Way hiking adventure. Of course, I had the right gear with me, so it made it like more enjoyable, but like I loved that, right? You could also have a silver lining lens. It's kind of like an optimist silver lining lens where you look for the silver lining even in the toughest moments. So like imagine you're on a tough uphill, but you can remind yourself like, how great are these views? I'm so happy I can be here. I'm so happy I'm healthy enough to be here. Thank goodness for the pockets of shade. Thanks to the trees. Or maybe you're with people you love to adventure with. Like, where can you find the silver lining? And with that lens, you're going to have a different conversation all the way up that tough uphill, right? So whatever it is, I want you to get in the practice of naming the lens you'd like to have before you start walking, because that can be a really powerful way to set the stage for what you actually create and what you experience. Because if you don't set it, your brain's going to default to whatever is loudest. And our brain definitely has a negativity bias, like just as humans. So we have to be intentional and purposeful in redirecting it. Okay? So I hope this episode has been a lesson and a reminder that you have way more control over your experience than you think you do. And most of that control lives in what you decide before you ever start hiking. And then just like recommitting along your hike to check in on your lens, to be looking through that lens, right? So you have the ability to respond to anything that happens along your adventure. You decide ahead of time how you engage, how you react, how you move forward. And because of that, your experience is in your hands. Okay? So when you take radical responsibility for your own results and adventures, there's something that's going to shift for you. You're going to stop waiting for external conditions to change or to be perfect. You stop needing everything to go perfectly, and you just show up and you create the experience you want to have no matter what. So this is a foundation of an adventurous mindset. And someone who is adventurous knows that there's no such thing as a perfect circumstance. There will always be unknowns and curveballs and plot twists. And yet there is so much joy and growth in being in that kind of adventure. So here are a few examples of what is entirely in your control in an adventure. You have control over the energy and intention that you bring to a hike. You have control over how you participate in your adventure. Like, are you active or are you passive in the adventure? You have control over whether you decide to belong, right? Belonging in an adventure is a decision, not something that you wait to feel. So sometimes people wait for other people to validate that they belong. You can decide that you belong no matter what. You have control over how you interpret hard and challenging moments along the trail. You can interpret them as you're failing or as evidence that you're growing. Even at the same moment, you can have a different choice there, right? Like, I'm failing, or I'm not doing as well, or I'm growing and I'm learning, and this is like good for me, right? You have control over whether you celebrate yourself. You have control over how quickly you integrate the lessons you've learned, the value that you've gained. You have control over how quickly you recovered from a quote unquote failed adventure or hike. I put that in quotes because that is just a lens that you have, right? This is a skill, like your recovery from your perceived failure and ability to see the value in it. Does it, like, for example, does it take you weeks to find the value, or does it take you a day, or does it even take you a moment, right? You could get to the point where you experience a perceived failure and instantly see the value or the silver lining. And it doesn't take you very long. I think this is a skill, like something that you get really well practiced on. But just start doing that to yourself, right? You also have control over your physical training and preparation for the adventure and how you show up for that. So your challenge before your next adventure, and I want you to actually do this. So before your next hike or before you hit the trailhead, I want you to take 5 minutes, literally just like 5 minutes sitting in your car, before you get out of your car and you get ready to hike. And I want you to name the lens for the day. I want you to imagine all the value that you're going to gain from the adventure ahead of time, or you could gain. Write it down, put it in a notes tab or whatever. Are you going to have a learning lens, a connection lens, an optimist lens, a capability lens? Are you going to be ready to catch the mind drama before it hijacks your day? So I want you to set a lens and intention on purpose, the same way that you prepare your route or check your backpack, right? Your brain is going to be looking for evidence of whatever you tell it to look for. So you might as well start telling it something good and start having it search for all the value. And if you want to make it even more concrete, write down 3 specific things that you're going to actively look for. So, for example, not vague, I'm going to have a good time, be specific. Maybe it's, I'm going to notice one moment of unexpected beauty today. I'm going to have one real conversation with somebody in my group. I'm going to catch myself the first time I spiral into mind drama and then, find the silver lining or find something I can be optimistic about in this moment. So the thing that I know for sure, after literally guiding hundreds of women through our programs and thousands in our Backpacking Badass program over the years, the trail is going to give you exactly what you go looking for. So if you go looking for what is hard, you will find it every single time. But if you go looking for what is good, growing you, valuable, where you are capable, you will find that too. Even in the exact same conditions, on the same trails, in the same weather as somebody else. That is just how your brain works, okay? So you don't need to have perfect conditions to have a better experience. You just need a different lens. And when you start practicing this won't just change your adventures and your hikes. It literally will start showing up everywhere else in your life too. Okay? Because I use this lens concept in all the things that I do. All right? And it changes everything. Okay? So I hope this was helpful. It gives you something concrete to practice. And I'm excited to hear how this lens concept, transforms your trips and your hikes. Okay? So that is it for me now. And I will see you next time. Bye. Hey, I wanted to thank you real quick for tuning into the show and listening all the way to the end. If you love this episode and you want deeper support in becoming a safe, confident, and self-sufficient hiker and backpacker, then head over to shedreamsofalpine.com/waitlist to learn more about our Backpacking Badass coaching program, where I teach you absolutely everything you need to know to be self-reliant on the trails and stop waiting around on others for the adventure invite. So I'd love to help you more in your journey of stepping into your adventurous identity, and that program is the absolute best place for us to start working together. So again, that's shedreamsofalpine.com/waitlist, and you can learn all about it there. So that's it for today, folks. I hope you get to spend some time outside this week, and I'll be back very soon with a brand new episode. Bye.